Hello and welcome to the Global Brief for August 25th. If you ever look at the daily news and feel like you're just getting hit with a bunch of random, disconnected stories, well, you're not wrong. That's how it feels. But what if I told you it's not random at all? Today, we're not just going to glance at the headlines. We're going to treat them like pieces of a giant global puzzle. We're going to see how they actually snap together to create one big, interconnected picture of our world. Okay, so let's really get into this. It's so easy to see the world as just one crisis popping up after another. Pure chaos, right? But what if it's not chaos? What if it's a super complex system? Think of it like a giant spider web. A tiny vibration over here, say a drone strike in Eastern Europe, can make the whole web tremble. And you might feel it way over there as a shipping delay for something you ordered. Today, we get to be the detectives. We're on the hunt for those hidden threads, the cause and effect that ties it all together. We're going to follow the connections and watch the single story of our world unfold. All right, first up, we're heading straight to the front lines, the places where tensions aren't just simmering anymore. They are boiling over into actual open conflict. This is where you see nations testing their limits, pushing boundaries, and honestly, seeing what they can get away with. It's the sharpest edge of global politics, and it's where so many of these connections begin. 1,000. Just let that number sit there for a second. It stands for over 1,000 buildings completely destroyed in Gaza City. What we're seeing is an expansion of Israeli ground operations, with tanks now moving into really dense residential areas. And this isn't just accidental damage, it's a tactic. But it's a tactic that brings with it absolutely immense consequences. It raises these huge questions about international law, about this principle called proportionality. Is the military gain really worth the civilian cost? When you see this level of destruction and you combine it with the threat of starvation, you get a humanitarian crisis that sends shockwaves through the entire international community. It affects diplomacy, aid organizations, and public opinion thousands of miles away. And just like that, the map of this conflict gets bigger. See, it's not contained. Following attacks by Houthi forces in Yemen, who, remember, are backed by Iran, Israel has now retaliated with airstrikes on the capital, Sana'a. This is a perfect example of what experts call geographic escalation. It's like watching a wildfire jump from one part of the forest to the next. Now, why does this matter to everyone? Well, Yemen sits right on top of one of the world's most critical shipping lanes. The fighting here doesn't just threaten people in Sana'a, it threatens the flow of goods through the Red Sea, and that can directly affect the price you pay for gas or electronics. It pulls the entire region, and by extension the global economy, one step closer to a much, much wider war. Wow, this is just sheer audacity, but it's wrapped in an incredible amount of risk. On its 34th Independence Day, Ukraine reportedly sent a drone that hit a transformer at the Kursk nuclear power plant inside Russia. I mean, just think about that for a second. This is not just another military target, it's a deeply symbolic and frankly terrifying move. There's this global understanding, a sort of unspoken rule even in the middle of a war, that you don't mess with nuclear power plants. Hitting one, even a non-critical part of it, crosses a massive red line. It suddenly introduces the horrifying possibility of a nuclear catastrophe into a conventional war. It's a move born of desperation, for sure, designed to show Russia that nowhere is safe. But man, it puts the entire world on edge. And this slide right here, this lays out the impossible high-stakes tightrope walk perfectly. In one column, you've got Ukraine taking this huge risk with the Kursk strike. But in the other, you've got the United States, which, as President Zelensky himself has confirmed, is actively stopping Ukraine from using powerful American weapons for strikes deep inside Russia. This is the absolute core dilemma for the West. How do you give your ally enough firepower to survive without crossing a line that starts a direct all-out war with a nuclear-armed Russia? It's a geopolitical balancing act with absolutely no safety net, and every single decision, whether it's made in Kyiv or Washington, has that terrifying calculation behind it. Destruction isn't always just about getting a military advantage. Sometimes it's about controlling the story. Over in Myanmar, the incredible 125-year-old Goktik Viaduct, this colonial-era masterpiece of engineering, has been destroyed. And what happened immediately? The military junta and the rebel forces started a furious blame game. This shows you a critical part of modern conflict. The information war is just as important as the physical one. Destroying a beloved national landmark isn't just about cutting a supply line, it's a symbolic blow. It's meant to crush your enemy's morale and rally support for your side.
Cultural heritage becomes both a casualty of the war and a weapon in the fight for hearts and minds.
Okay, so now we're going to step away from the smoke of the battlefield and into the quiet, climate-controlled rooms where the diplomatic chess game gets played. It's a different kind of conflict, for sure. Here, words are the weapons, alliances are the pieces on the board, and the prize is always influence.
And here we go, a classic move in that chess game. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, comes out and publicly blames the West for blocking peace talks. He says Moscow is ready to sit down, but there's a catch. Only if its agenda is met first. An expert look at this sees it not as a real offer, but as a tactic to control the narrative. It's kind of like saying, hey, I'd love to have dinner with you, but only if we go to my favorite restaurant, you agree to order my favorite meal, and you let me pay with Monopoly money. By setting these impossible conditions, you make yourself look like the reasonable one who wants peace, knowing full well the other side has to say no. And then they look like the obstacle. It's clever.
Okay, so tension between adversaries like Russia and the West, that's expected. But what about between old friends, between allies? France has officially summoned the US ambassador. They called him in to express their serious displeasure. And the reason? The ambassador had sent a letter basically accusing the French government of not doing enough to fight a rise in anti-Semitism. Now, Paris didn't just disagree. They called it unacceptable interference. In the world of diplomacy, those are bombshells. You don't use language that strong in public unless you want to send a very, very clear message. It just goes to show how deep the cracks have gotten in the trust between two of the world's oldest allies.
So, while one old alliance is showing some serious cracks, here's a country trying to perform an incredibly delicate dance with two competing superpowers at the same time. South Korea has sent an envoy to Beijing to try and mend their strained relationship. Just think about their position for a minute. Their economic lifeblood, especially in things like tech and manufacturing, is so deeply tied to China. But their national security, their actual defense, is guaranteed by a treaty with the United States. So they are in this constant state of trying to de-risk their economy from China without upsetting their security partner in Washington, and the other way around. Every single move, every public statement has to be carefully weighed for how it's going to look in both Beijing and Washington. It's a tough spot to be in.
But it's not all doom and gloom and strained relationships. New connections are being built all the time in this constant global reshuffle. Take a look at Japan. They just signed 300 new cooperation agreements across Africa. This isn't just charity work. This is pure strategy. It's a clear attempt to offer African nations a different option than China's huge Belt and Road Initiative, trying to position Japan as a different kind of partner. And at the same time, look at Pakistan and Bangladesh. The first high-level Pakistani official has visited Dhaka in 13 years. Given their incredibly painful history and the violent split back in 1971, this is a huge step. It signals a real desire to move past old wounds and build new economic and transport links for the future.
So, all this conflict, all this diplomatic chess, it doesn't just happen in a bubble. It has real, tangible consequences for the global economy. It changes how money and goods and resources move all around the planet. So let's take a look at how those economic tides are shifting right now. So just how fragile are our global supply chains? Well, this fragile. The United States made what seems like a small bureaucratic change. It got rid of the $800 duty-free allowance for imports. And the result wasn't a slowdown. It was a complete screeching halt, a full-scale operational failure. Major services like Germany's Deutsche Post and the UK's Royal Mail immediately stopped most of their commercial shipments to the US. It's a perfect example of our interconnected world. One little rule change on one side of the Atlantic can instantly paralyze a massive part of the e-commerce system on the other. It shows you that this whole thing is built on this complex web of agreements that we totally take for granted until one tiny thread gets pulled.
In a world that's full of disruptions and partners you can't always count on, smart countries are actively looking for new friends. Canada, for instance, is launching a major trade mission, not to its usual partners in Europe or Asia, but down to Brazil and Colombia. And this isn't just a routine trip, it's a strategic push south. By focusing on high-growth areas like green infrastructure and clean tech, Canada is making a clear move to diversify its economic relationships. It's all about reducing its dependence on any one single partner, like the US or China, and finding new opportunities for growth in the big emerging markets of Latin America. Smart.
Okay, so we've been way up high at the 30,000-foot view of geopolitics and economics. Let's zoom all the way in now. Let's come down to the human scale, where these massive global forces actually hit everyday lives, create huge social debates, and also fuel some incredible ambition.
This slide right here is such a powerful snapshot of how much pressure societies everywhere are under. Every single one of these bullet points is its own world of strain. In China, you have the raw brute power of nature. Typhoon Kajiki forces 20,000 people to flee their homes. In Nigeria, the state itself is stretched to its absolute breaking point, fighting multiple internal wars at once, rescuing 76 kidnapped victims in one area while battling terrorists in another. Then in the UK, a deep social debate over immigration is literally playing out on the streets, turning hotels for refugees into these symbolic battlegrounds. And in the small African nation of Eswatini, a fundamental question of sovereignty is being fought in the courts as rights groups sue the government over a secret deal to take deportees from the US. Each one of these is a story of a society grappling with huge, huge challenges. But, and this is a really important but, amidst all of that strain and all that conflict, you still have these incredible stories of human ambition. India's space agency, ISRO, just absolutely nailed a crucial parachute test for its Gaganyaan program. This is the system that's going to bring its astronauts safely back to Earth. It's a massive milestone on their journey to becoming only the fourth nation in history after the US, Russia, and China to send its own citizens into space. It's not just a technological win, it's a statement of national pride and a powerful reminder that even in a world full of problems, we are still a species that looks up and dreams of going further. So we've looked at nations and armies and economies. We've seen conflict, and we've seen incredible progress. But before we wrap all this up, let's bring it all the way back down to the most fundamental level: the staggering power and endurance of the individual human spirit. This quote just nails it perfectly. Right now, as we speak, 3 Scottish brothers are out there in the middle of the massive Pacific Ocean rowing. They are in the final stretch of a 9,000-mile journey in a tiny little boat from Peru all the way to Australia. It is an almost unbelievable test of physical and mental strength. And why are they doing it? To raise £1 million for clean water charities. It's a story about the bond between brothers, about pushing the absolute limits of what's possible, and about serving a goal that is so much bigger than themselves. It's just a powerful reminder of what we are all capable of.
Which brings us right back to our big question from the start. Is the world just chaotic noise? Or, after looking at all these pieces, do you see the connections? A drone strike in Ukraine directly shapes a policy decision in the Pentagon. A small trade rule change in Washington stops mail delivery in Europe. China's influence in Africa prompts a whole new diplomatic push from Japan. Nothing, and I mean nothing, happens in a vacuum. The world isn't random. It is one deeply, complexly, and fascinatingly interconnected system. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer today. Our goal, as always, is to just give you the facts without the spin so that you have the tools you need to connect the dots for yourself. In a world that is so full of noise, we want to be a space for clear, condensed news. Follow us on Spotify and YouTube to listen to this podcast every morning at 8 a.m. GMT. We will be back tomorrow morning to put the next day's puzzle together. Until then, keep thinking and ask yourself, which one of today's threads do you think will pull the whole picture in a new direction tomorrow?